How's it going, guys? Josh here with Dedicated Health, and today we're covering another one of the big three lifts. Today we're covering the bench press, the king of push movements. If you are, like me, trying to get a bigger chest and you want to really move some heavy weights, this is how you do it and how you do it right. You cannot replace the bench press. It is fundamental if you're trying to grow chest and trying to get some heavy numbers moving. It's the best way for some aggressive overload when it comes to the chest muscles. Now, there is some key things you need to keep note whenever you're doing this movement though. So let's go ahead and cover them and let's get started. The bench press, although a very important lift, can be the more simplistic of the major three lifts, and probably the one you're most familiar with. It's very important though to do this correctly, and here's some important cues to follow whenever you're performing this movement. First off, before you even lay down, where you have your feet is going to play a huge factor in this. If you don't have proper foot drive in this lift, you're going to really hinder the amount of weight you can move. So it's very important that you get this part right. So whenever you sit down on the bench, you want your feet a little bit wider than hip width. You want to make sure that your feet are underneath your knees. I don't really care about how far underneath your knees, but they have to be at the point where you can actually press into the bench. You need to be able to generate power through the floor to get maximum effort in this movement. It's very important though that you're able to drive through the feet. It isn't important that your heels touch. If you have to get yourself in a position where your heels are up off the ground because you don't have the flexibility to put your heels on the ground, that is perfectly fine, as long as you're able to push through the floor and you're able to stabilize yourself. Next up is your shoulder blades. Whenever you're laying down on the bench, you want to make sure that you have your shoulder blades tucked back. Your shoulders should actually be behind your chest. This is very important. You want to be using primarily your chest for this movement, and if your shoulders come too far forward, you're going to be using them more than your chest, which is going to take a lot of the hypertrophy benefits away from this lift. The other benefit of this is you're going to get a nice little arch in your back. You don't want to over-exaggerate this arch. I see several people in the powerlifting community just making these huge arches so they don't have to move the bar as far. This might be beneficial to get more weight up, but it's definitely not beneficial as it comes to your spine. You want to make sure that there's a slight arch because this is going to protect your back, and it's also going to provide a nice and stable platform to push the bar off of. But you don't want to be a scared cat in reverse. That's very important. Next up is where you're laying on the bench. You should be about eye level with the bar. So if you're laying flat on the bench, the bar should be directly in front of your eyeballs. This will make sure whenever you perform the lift off, you have ample amount of space to perform the lift without hitting the rack. Because hitting the rack will interrupt the motor pattern and just make the lift a lot more inconvenient. Last but not least, before you perform the lift off, you want to make sure you brace the core. You want to flex the abs, make sure you have that nice little arch in your back, and everything is flexed and nice and solid before you start the movement. Next important decision is how wide you need to grip the bar. A good rule of thumb here is the wider you grip the bar, the more you're going to work the chest. The closer you grip the bar, the more you're going to work the triceps. You want a happy medium. This is a compound movement. We want to be working several muscles at once. So, what I recommend doing is putting your arms to your sides at about a 45-degree angle. This should emulate where the bar is going to end at the bottom of your lift. Then, press straight up until your arms are even with your shoulders. This should give you an idea of where you need to grip the bar. Take note of this. So use the markings on the bar, the non-gnarling circles, to see where your fingers are at. For me, the bar normally ends up right around my ring finger, so I know whenever I'm gripping the bar, I need to put my ring finger on the non-gnarled parts of the bar to get proper width for my body type. This will vary depending on how wide you are or how wide you like to lift, but I do recommend trying to keep this motor skill and keep it very, very consistent because you don't want to be changing your hand placement too often. You want to basically hammer this technique in, where whenever you lay down for the bench, you do this exact same grip, exact same width every time. This shouldn't be a factor that you worry about later on in your lifting career. Now that you know how wide your hand should be, make sure you're gripping the bar properly. Wrap your thumbs. A lot of people will just rest their thumbs to the side. This may look cool, and for some people it may even be more comfortable. However, dropping a 315-pound bar on yourself is never going to look cool or feel comfortable. Your ribs don't like it very much either, so make sure you wrap your thumb. It's also a good idea to grab the bar from the top. This will properly align your wrist. You want to think about it as if you're trying to bend the bar in half, because you don't want your wrist bending. This is going to put a lot of pressure on your wrist, and on top of that, you're going to lose some pushing power. because the line of force is no longer going through your arm and through the bar. It's now going through your arm, awkwardly up through your wrist, and you're losing a lot of your pressure. And you don't want to do that. You want to keep all pushing power as strong as possible. So make sure from your hands all the way down to your elbow is a straight line. That way you've got proper pushing power and proper alignment. Next up, you're finally laying on the bench the right way and you have the bar in hand. Now you need to lift it off. I recommend having the bar positioned where you can actually have a little bit of a bend in your arm whenever the bar is racked. That way you have a little bit of pushing power to actually get the bar off the rack. Once you get the bar even with your shoulders, you want to pause for a brief moment. At this point, you want to take a big breath in, flex the core, and you can begin the lift. Now that you're ready to lift the bar, it's important to follow the proper bar path. You shouldn't be just pressing straight up and straight down. There should be a little bit of an arc to it. This will give you the most effective power whenever you're lifting. And you'll have to flare your elbows, which means you'll have to untuck your shoulder blades and lose all that stability we work so hard to get. So make sure you're following a proper arc. So if you look at it from the side here, what you'll see is I'm starting even with my shoulders, and I'm lowering down, keeping my shoulder blades nice and tucked, and allowing my elbows to actually go back past my body. The bar touches just below my nipples, almost right above my abs. From there, once it touches my chest, I explode upwards. I pause for a brief moment at the top, making sure I'm properly aligned, and then repeating. Not following this path can lead to some serious shoulder injuries. So make sure you practice the bar path above all else whenever it comes to this lift. Next up is how low you need to be lifting. Now I am going to always recommend trying to touch your chest for any healthy individual. If you don't have any shoulder issues and this doesn't cause you any kind of pain, make sure you try to touch your chest each and every time. This will force you to get stronger with this motor pattern, which is very important. This is also going to provide the most chest activation, which for a lot of us, chest growth is what we're going for with this movement. Now, if you already have shoulder injuries, or you find any kind of discomfort with going this low, it is okay to shorten the range of motion. Don't worry about it too much. If it hurts you, don't do it. It's better to be able to perform the movement for a long time than it is to touch your chest and only be performing it for a short period of time. So touch your chest if you can, but if you can't, don't sweat it. Just go as low as you can to at least a 90-degree angle before pressing back up. There you guys have it. There's a step-by-step, in detail, how to bench press. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like. And if you want to see more like it or have questions about a different lift, please feel free to comment below. Let me know what you want to see and we'll make sure we get it for you. Thank you guys so much again for watching. I'll see you next Sunday at noon. Until then, stay dedicated. If you're looking for a program that uses exercises like these and in the right way, head over to dedicatedhealthgym.com and we'll take care of any of your fitness needs. We have supplements, online training, even a full gym facility if you're ever in the Terre Haute region. Just stop by, say hi, and remember, always stay dedicated.